Hey everyone, it's me, Aaron. You know, a guy who's just in that thing you watched a couple hours ago. And guess what? I'm still talking about Thor, because this is Comic Class, the show on this channel every single week where we just geek out about comic books. And today, Mighty Thor at the Gates of Valhalla came out, and it is the finale to the Jane Foster Thor storyline. Not to Jason Aaron's run on Thor, it's more of the end to Act 2 of his run, because he still has the big War for the Ten Realms storyline coming up next year, which before I get into that, I know a lot of people are going to be asking, hey, you hate all these giant Marvel events, how do you feel about the War for the Ten Realms? I'm super excited for the War for the Ten Realms, because Jason Aaron has spent 5 years setting that thing up. I am totally okay with giant massive events if you take the time to set them up, and Jason Aaron has taken the time to set this one up. But we ain't talking about that. Instead, today we are talking about Jane Foster Thor, because if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know I freaking love Jane Foster as Thor. In fact, I've loved all of Jason Aaron's run on Thor, but there was something very special about the character of Jane Foster Thor. It meant something to a very large audience out there. It brought a lot of new readers in, and honestly, for someone like me, who never really was that big into Thor in the past, yeah man, she made a huge impact on me. So yeah, today, in all honesty, I'm not really going to talk about At the Gates of Valhalla all that much, simply because I know that they are advertising this as the big finale to the Jane Foster arc, the big send-off to her, a big tribute to her. It isn't really, in all honesty. It's more of just Jason Aaron coming in here again and just going, hey, here's some more seeds of stuff coming up. Look at Malekith, he's still being really evil. Oh, he's got stuff planned. But in all honesty, I'm fine with that because I really like seeing Malekith just being evil and seeing all the stuff that he's got planned. But also, I really did dig this issue. That's harder to say than I thought. I really did dig this issue because it was also about the 3 granddaughters of Thor from the future, who I freaking love, by the way. They've been in the Jason Aaron Thor run pretty much ever since he started that book. They've been popping up here or there, and whenever they pop up, I absolutely love seeing them. They're 3 of my favorite characters that he has introduced in this series. I really want someone to give them a mini-series. I'd love it if they could get ongoing, but in all honesty, they're from an alternate future, and alternate future series never really last all that long. But a mini-series! I would love to get a freaking mini-series on those 3. I love that one of them acts just like Thor. I love that one of them, you know, they're more into like spells and knowledge, so they're kind of almost like Thor's mother in a way. And then the other one is just flat out Loki. It's Loki with a giant axe, which raises all kinds of questions where that came in. But yes, I freaking love the 3 granddaughters of Thor. So it's all about them traveling throughout the history of Thor all the way back to when Thor was really young. They even go to the future to the 26th century of Thor, which it was fun to see that version of Thor pop up again. I thought no one even remembered that guy existed. And then they go and they meet Jane Foster, and it's just them talking to Jane Foster and going, you know, we read stories about you and it's great. So that's really the only like celebration of Jane Foster you get in this issue. So it's a little bit of a, you know, it's not exactly what they advertised the issue to be, but it is still really fun, especially if you've been enjoying the Jason Aaron run on that book. However, because this was supposed to be the big celebration of Jane Foster Thor, I figured that's just what we would do here on Comic Class today. I would take a look back at Jane Foster as Thor. I would talk about my feelings towards that character, how much I have enjoyed her entire run on that book, and also maybe just talk about what could possibly be coming up for her in the future. Now, the first thing that I will say about Jane Foster Thor is that, like many of the legacy characters that Marvel has introduced lately, I really enjoy the character, but I didn't really enjoy the way that they got introduced. Like, I feel like one of Marvel's big problems with their legacy characters is that they kind of just kick the old character to the curb. It's like, nah, man, if you're gonna do that, you gotta give him a big send-off. You gotta have like a big storyline leading up to that, something that really captures the heart of who that character is, and then send them off in style. And I don't really feel like Marvel has done that with any of the legacy characters that they've introduced. You know, like Tony Stark just goes into a coma because he gets punched really hard by Captain Marvel. Steve Rogers just gets the super soldier serum sucked out of him, so he becomes an old man. Thor just loses his hammer because Nick Fury whispers something to him in a crossover event that had nothing at all to do with Thor. So yeah, I didn't really enjoy that stuff. However, as I said, I still really like the end results of those because I still did really like a lot of the legacy characters that they have gone on to introduce, especially Jane Foster Thor. But I will say this about Thor losing his hammer and what ended up becoming the reason why he lost his hammer. I just want to cover that real quickly because earlier today I made a video in which I spotlighted the God Butcher and God Bomb storyline from Jason Aaron that introduced Gore the God Butcher, this villain who basically had almost become a god himself because he set out on a goal to destroy all gods. He said all the gods were unworthy. All the gods were basically monsters. They were basically just big powerful beings who didn't want to help anyone out there, and that's why he was trying to wipe them all out. And when I went back and I read that, and then I was taking a look back at the Jane Foster Thor storyline and what led up to Thor losing his hammer, actually, it almost feels like this was planned from the start. When you go back and you read through everything that Jason Aaron has done, it's like, oh, this really does feel like it was Act 2. It feels like he did have a plan to introduce Jane Foster as Thor. Like, it's really smart how he just planted the seeds all throughout this. Like, when he introduced that Jane Foster now had cancer, it was like, oh wow, what's going to become of that? It's like, well, this is what became of that. Yeah, he definitely was setting this up at some point, and the entire reason why Thor ended up no longer being worthy to lift his hammer is because the thing that Nick Fury ended up whispering to him was Gore was right. And I know a lot of people got really ticked at that because they were like, what, so now Thor doubts himself just because Nick Fury said something and now he can't lift the hammer? If that was true, then why can't Odin lift the hammer anymore? One of the amazing things that Jason Aaron did with Thor is that he redefined what Mjolnir is. He redefined what Thor's hammer actually is, because he came in here and he said that there is basically a living, sentient storm more powerful than the gods themselves living inside that hammer. And basically, as I said, it's sentient. It has a mind of its own. So when you think about it that way, you realize, oh, when Nick Fury whispered that to Thor, he wasn't convincing Thor that he's not worthy. He was basically just saying the last thing that the hammer needed to hear to go, you know what, yeah, I've been thinking about this whole time. Gore really was right. Nick, you kind of pushed me over the edge on that. It was the hammer itself going, you know what, yeah, gods really are assholes. Gods really are monsters. And that's why no god can lift up any of the hammers anymore. And I find that to be really interesting because when you go back and you look at how Jason Aaron wrote Thor, a lot of it has been focusing on what can Thor do beyond just simply punching big monsters. What can Thor do to try and actually help people in as many ways as he can? I mean, he had an entire like environmental storyline in there, The Last Days of Midgard, which was one of my favorite Thor storylines of all time, in which it was really just spotlighting on Thor going, listen, Earth is dying, I'm a god, shouldn't I be able to think of some way to help this? So yeah, the entire theme of Jason Aaron's Thor storyline has been, what can the gods do beyond what they've already been doing? So having the hammer now say, yeah, listen, gods, you've kind of been screwing up, and until all of you get your act together, none of you can lift me, only humans can lift me. It actually really fits. And with how he has been setting up Jane Foster to be the official representative of Midgard in the Council of the Realms, he was definitely putting her in place to be like, yeah, no, you're going to be in the exact spot where you need to be able to lift this hammer up. So when I went back and I was like taking a look at Jason Aaron's run, it was like, holy cow, it really does feel like he was setting this up the entire time. But okay, let's go ahead and start talking about Jane Foster as Thor. Let's talk about the character herself. And I want to go ahead and let everyone know I'm not coming in here and just doing a giant massive story summation of the entire 4 years that she was Thor, because yeah man, that would be way too long of a video. Plus I kind of want you guys to go out there and read these books yourselves. But also, I've made other videos talking about Malekith and his evil plans and the War for the 10 Realms, and I'm sure I'm going to make other videos talking about that when we actually get to the War for the 10 Realms next year. But for now, I just want to talk about what I enjoyed about Jane Foster as Thor, because, as I said, today, with this issue coming out, the entire point of it was to be a celebration of Jane Foster Thor. The entire point of this issue, and the point of today's video, is just to talk about, honestly, why I love this character so much. And the main reason why I love this character is honestly one of the things that I loved about the regular Thor when Jason Aaron was writing him before he lost his hammer, is that Jason Aaron knows the perfect way to turn Thor into a badass. Jason Aaron knows the exact ways. How did I forget the name Aaron? Jason Aaron knows the perfect way to make your jaw just drop while you read Thor. He knows the perfect way to make you turn a page and see Thor doing something that just shocks you and makes you go, this is going to go down in the history books as one of Thor's most epic moments. And he continued that when Jane Foster became Thor. He was not afraid to keep pushing the limits of what Thor could do. Some of Thor's most epic moments happened with Jane Foster as Thor. I love that he never once pumped the brakes on this character. He kept going as far as he possibly could. However, as I said, he was able to impress me with what he did with Thor Odin's son as Thor, but when it came to Jane Foster's Thor, he threw in a personal element. he threw in an emotional element into all that. Like I said, there were a lot of emotions and personal experience going into the regular Thor because a lot of his storyline did have to do with his long history of trying to become Thor, of trying to lift the hammer. Man, again, when you look back at his entire run and how a lot of it had to do with Thor wanting to be able to lift that hammer as a kid but not being able to, man, yeah, he really did have all this planned out. So yes, while the Thor God of Thunder series did have a personal history to it that really did help define who Thor Odin's son was, Jane Foster's personal history is very different, especially when it comes to the other gods out there. Because whenever Thor Odin's son would see Loki, and Loki would be scheming and be like, oh Loki, I know you're up to something. Or whenever Odin would just be being a giant tyrannical D-bag, Thor would go, oh father, no, I must convince you otherwise. I love that Jane Foster has had to experience so much crap with the gods over the years that when she finally has the power of the gods, she went, yeah, I'm not going to sit here and listen to your crap. That's a hard no from me on that. I love that the very first time that she sees Loki just strolling up to her, just like, hey, it's me, Loki. I'm gonna do that thing where I talk, and you're Thor, so you're gonna listen to me. I love that she just instantly knocked his block off. Because she went, yeah, very first time I ever saw Loki, he hypnotized me and tried to murder me. Yeah, we ain't doing that this time. I love that she actually did try and get revenge on Loki, and you could actually feel that. It was like, oh wow, yeah, the entire history of all the crap that Jane Foster has had to put up with from these gods, it's coming out in this moment. I love that she went toe-to-toe with Odin. Thor has always looked up to Odin like, yeah, okay, I know that you're a monster, but you're my father, and alright, well, we're just gonna kind of have to work things out here. I love that Jane Foster, the moment that Odin is just being a monster, she punches him just through planets. That was another thing. As I said, I love that Jason Aaron was able to look at Thor and go, let me just try and push this as far as I can. The epic stuff that Thor can do, I want to keep going further with it. One of my favorite moments from the Jane Foster Thor storyline is when she's fighting Odin and she goes, yeah, the distance from Earth to Jupiter is this far. We make that in 2 punches. Holy cow! For anybody out there who is a math expert, I want you to come in here and just do the calculations to figure out how much force is in one of Thor's punches that she was able to get Odin from Asgard to Jupiter in just 2 punches. But it's not just that, oh, I like that Jane Foster punched Odin really hard. I love that while she was fighting him, she was going over their history like, yeah, I love Thor. Me and him, we could have been something special, but guess who the big asshole was who kept coming in here and say, no mortals are going to date my son. Yeah, I got some personal feelings that I need to work out by punching Odin in the face. It added a whole other layer to that massive fight scene that we got between them. And it wasn't just Jane's personal connection to the gods. It wasn't just her personal history to the gods that made this special. It was also her humanity. And when you look back at Jason Aaron's entire run on the Thor series, that has been a recurring theme. Thor's need for humanity. And again, it brings me to this whole idea of Jane Foster now being the one who can lift the hammer. It actually makes all of that play out. It makes that actually go, oh shoot, this is actually following the trend that you have set up throughout this entire storyline, because his version of Thor, the God of Thunder, the regular old Thor, it was a lot of stories about Thor going down to Earth and trying to establish a connection with the humans. It was him coming down and trying to actually, you know, see what he could do for humans. We saw that whole storyline, The Last Days of Midgard, in which, as I said, it is more of an environmental message. It is, I care about human beings. I want to save this planet that you all live on. And we saw him establishing a personal connection with that new S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, Roz Sullivan, who is also a great character that Jason Aaron has created for this storyline. But we also saw, after the big battle in Broxton, Oklahoma, we saw him going, okay, I kind of destroyed your town. I'm going to give up my own home. I'm going to take a part of my kingdom and I'm going to give it to you. This is where you can live. There's that great scene of Thor talking to the little kid and she's like, oh, which room is mine? He goes, any room that you want. It's like, yeah, it's Thor trying to get in touch with humanity. It is Thor trying to create that personal connection with the humans. That has been a defining theme of his entire storyline. And that goes all the way back to Gore the God Butcher, in which it was, yeah, the gods aren't worthy. They're not supposed to be worthy. They have abused their power too much. So to have this storyline in which Thor loses his hammer to a human because the hammer itself has decided, yeah, Gore was right. The humans are the ones who deserve this power because the gods have just screwed up too much. It continues that storyline. And when we look at Jane Foster as Thor, yeah, her humanity played a huge role in that. I mean, you look at a lot of the stuff that Jane was doing as Thor. You know, she was leading the charge in the War for the Ten Realms when all of Asgard said, yeah, no, we don't want any part of this. We've got our own things going on over here. She was the one leading that charge. She was assembling people from the other 10 realms to come together and fight Malekith and his forces. We also saw her standing up to corrupt organizations like Roxanne who were poisoning the earth because, yeah, man, she wants to stand up for humans. And again, this is stuff that the regular Thor was doing, but now it was like the defining element of Jane Foster, because that's what the Hammer thought everyone should be doing. It's not so much that the Hammer said, hey, Thor, you yourself aren't worthy. It's that you're just part of a group that isn't doing anything to help. And yeah, until you can get your group to come together, yeah, man, I'm not really on your side. It was the Hammer saying the gods need to look to humans. They need to look to humans in order to decide how to better themselves. And that really came to a head at the end of this storyline. At the end of all this, that was the big lesson that the gods had to learn. You have Freya in there coming out and saying, yeah, man, Jane was right. Odin, you have no idea what you're doing, and you have led all of us to ruin. Basically, the gods have just been staying up here partying while so much chaos has been spraying across the realms. Yeah, Jane was right about all this. And what I love is that was the lesson that they learned. It wasn't just Thor, it wasn't just Freya who were on the side of humans at the end. At the end of all this, Odin, the guy who kept saying, this is insulting, that the gods even have to lower themselves to dealing with humans. Oh, whoever this is that stole the hammer from my son and from me, they will pay. When he finds out it is Jane Foster, when he finds out it is a human, and a sick human at that, who took this hammer, he is enraged. But it's right after Jane had saved them all from Mangog. Right after she had done everything in her power in order to stop this monster that was going to wipe out all of Asgard and kill all the gods. And it cost her her life. And I love that Odin went to Valhalla to find Jane as she was about to cross over, and he is enraged. He is just brimming with pure hatred and anger over what happened. But when he sees Jane about to go into Valhalla, and he has to stop in the middle of his tirade to finally realize, I was going to die, and my son was going to die, and my wife was going to die. None of us could stop this. But you stopped him, even though it cost you your life, even after everything that I had said, everything that I had done that was wrong. You still stood up for us when I wouldn't stand up for you. He had to face that fact. Jane was the one that made Odin finally realize, oh God, yeah, the humans are kind of better than us. We have kind of lost our ways. And seeing Odin actually tell Jane, it's okay, you have earned this. You can go to Valhalla now. Man, that was a great character arc for Odin. That was fantastic. And for anybody who has not read how this storyline ends, tune out now. It is honestly one of the best single issues of any book that I have read this year. Tune out, because I'm about to spoil it, because we have to talk about this. As I said, Jason Aaron came in here and redefined what Mjolnir was. That was this giant living sentient storm trapped inside the hammer. Which honestly, to me, is one of the coolest redefinings of a character's origin since Jeff Johns was on Green Lantern. Like, I would honestly put this up there with Jeff Johns coming in here and going, hey, there's other lanterns out there. But at the end of this storyline, after the hammer has been destroyed because she used it to throw Mangog into the sun, the storm was set free. And the storm was mad that Jane was dying. Another thing that I loved about this, yeah, the storm didn't like the gods. The gods imprisoned this storm. The storm kind of likes humans. Humans are trying their best to try and make the world a better place however they can. So I like that this storm actually did kind of form a personal connection with Jane. You actually got brief moments of the storm trying to talk to Jane. Like the moment in which Jane Foster, as Thor was dying, and she needed someone to come in there and save her, and the storm just manifested itself as Jane Foster to come in there and perform surgery on Thor. I freaking love that moment. That moment was so damn good in there. Because yeah, again, it's all about humanity. So that human touch of a storm making a friendship with a human being, it's one of the things that define this character. But at the end of this, the storm comes in there and it is just raging. It is just angry. And then Thor Odin's son, who has been trying to get this stupid storm to listen to him, to go, no, darn it, I am good enough. I am good enough to lift this. He forced the storm back into himself in order to try and bring Jane back to life. And he is now controlling the storm that even Odin couldn't tame. Odin had to imprison it in a hammer. And Thor, yes, he's finally proven that he is worthy enough again to be able to control this storm, and he is using it to try and save Jane Foster's life. And I love that Odin popped up there at the end and said, you can't control that. No one god can control that. And I was like, this is the moment in which Odin comes in and says, Thor, I'm so sorry. I realized I was wrong, but the woman you love, she's gone now, and I'm very sorry for your loss. But instead he just goes, good thing you're not the only god here. And it's father and son trying to control the storm that neither two of them could control on their own, using it to bring Jane back to freaking life. They brought her back to life. Oh my god, it was one of the best, just shocking moments of any book I have read this year. It's easily one of the best moments of any book. Because, yeah man, they made me go into this going, wow, so that's how Jane died. Jane had an amazing send-off. Jane had one of the best endings to her story arc of any character that I have read over the past couple of years. I hate to see her go. I love this character, but damn man, if you're gonna write a send-off that good, then farewell. But they didn't do that. They came in here and they had an even bigger epic moment than the epic send-off she just got to bring her back to life. That is the one time in which I am okay with the character coming back after a massive epic send-off. When the comeback can be even more epic, and of course when it happens in the very next issue. But this entire thing ends with Jane saying, yeah, okay, I am now officially done being Thor. There is no hammer left anymore. I'm going back to chemotherapy. I'm going back to take care of my cancer. And I'm going to fight this. No matter what, I'm going to make sure no more superheroing for me. I am going to go and have this taken care of. And it's a great way to send her off. She got her big epic moment there at the end, and we know she's going to get better. We know that she's going to keep fighting this like a human, because that was the defining thing about Jane Foster. I'm not going to do this the Asgardian way. I'm going to do it the human way. Again, the theme of humanity being throughout Jason Aaron's entire run on Thor. Sorry, I'm getting so excited. I'm getting jumbled here. But at the end of this, she just hands Thor the final piece of Mjolnir. Just a tiny pebble, and Thor's like, it's so heavy, but I can kind of lift it. And I was like, that's the storm in there. That's like them saying, all right, the gods have now finally figured it out. As I said, Thor, he had always kind of figured it out. He had always been about helping the humans. But again, he had to get the gods themselves to realize that. That was the thing that in my mind was keeping Thor from being worthy. It's that, yeah man, when everyone around you is doing evil, horrible stuff, and you're not doing anything to try and stop them from doing that, or maybe not evil, horrible stuff, but they're just not doing anything to help. You know, good men are doing nothing, and that is the definition of evil, and you're not doing anything about that? Yeah man, it doesn't really make you worthy. This shows that, man, the gods have learned. The gods have learned they have to be more human. And that's what, in my mind, was like, okay, this one tiny pebble that Thor is holding, it's really heavy. He is struggling to lift it up, but he is able to lift it. And he goes, come on, we've got hammers to make. Like, not just one, multiple hammers. And he's got that one little tiny piece of the original Mjolnir in there. It's like, all right, he's gonna go and create something new. And it's gonna be that thing that helps lead him and the other gods. Not just him, but the other gods into that tomorrow, into that future where they are now more human, where they do now have more of a connection with humanity. Yeah, I thought it was an amazing way for the Jane Foster storyline to end. And for anybody out there who just wanted the old Thor back, Jane had a massive impact on him. She has now changed him. Like I said, this was Act 2 of Jason Aaron's big entire overarching plot for Thor, and I think it was actually kind of perfect. I think where it got the other gods to at the end of this is exactly where they should be at the end of this. I thought it was fantastic. And again, another thing to bring up with Jane Foster's Thor, I did absolutely love the character. and I was really sad to see her go, but she had such an amazing send-off. But I am really glad that they didn't send her off. I am really glad for a couple of reasons. One, it's because Jane Foster is such a big character, and her version of Thor was so beloved. I saw someone on Twitter saying that Marvel's big problem is they made Jane Foster Thor too likable, and I was like, that should never be a problem with a new character, is that too many people like them. That's the entire point of creating new characters, is to make people like them. But yes, she was so likable that I knew, okay, if you kill her, they will bring her back. It will only be a matter of time until she comes back, and then this big epic send-off will not be that big and epic anymore, and it will take something away from that. So, yeah, you know, it's so sad thinking that an amazing, perfect ending to a character can be undone later. So the fact that now they don't have to do that is great. I'm glad for that. But the other thing that I really enjoy about the fact that Jane Foster Thor didn't die is that Jane Foster Thor means something to people. I haven't really talked about that much on this episode yet, but another huge thing about her is that she was going through cancer. And every single time that she picked up the hammer, because cancer is a natural thing, but chemotherapy isn't, the hammer would get rid of all the chemotherapy in her body, but the cancer would remain. It couldn't take care of that. So it was really heart-wrenching to know every time that she picked up the hammer, she was making herself worse. She was getting sicker. But at the same time, I know there are a lot of cancer patients out there who read comics, and it's kind of nice for them to have a character out there who was like, no, I'm going through this fight. Like the way that Jason Aaron would describe what it's like to go through chemotherapy, or how he would show her being so sick all the time. Yeah, I was like, man, he must have had a personal connection to this. He must know someone who has gone through this, or at least talk to people who had gone through this, because he is absolutely capturing that personal touch. And all I could think was, it's great for cancer patients out there to have a hero who, you know, is one of Earth's mightiest heroes out there. But it's really sad to think that she still dies in the end. That's really kind of a downer for anybody out there who might have been going through cancer themselves and needed a character like this to pull through. So the fact that she pulls through and they're like, no, you're gonna get better. All those people out there who needed a character like that at that moment in their life, you still have that character. She's gonna pull through, she's gonna be strong, she's gonna keep on going. That's an important message for anybody out there who needed a character like that. I am so glad they did not kill her off, mostly for that reason, because of what she meant to other people. And that's another thing that honestly I just loved about Jane Foster as Thor, is that I did see so many new people coming into my store to read Jane Foster Thor, and they kept coming in. This was not some like flash in the pan thing in which a lot of people read her and was like, oh, okay, this is great, and then they never came back, because yeah, comics, just based on the entire medium itself, it's kind of hard to get new readers in there. I've talked about this many times, but just the entire format of comics, like a once-a-month thing, people who don't really read comics, who didn't grow up reading comics, it's hard for them to adapt to that. But this was something where I saw so many people coming into my store who hadn't really read comics, or especially hadn't read Thor comics, and now they were regular comic fans. They kept coming back over and over and over again. So yeah, man, I like Jane Foster because I got to see firsthand the connection she had with that audience. I got to see what she meant to that audience. This is one of my favorite stories about reading comics in public that I've ever had. I was on the subway reading an issue of the Jane Foster Thor storyline, and this mother came up to me and she had this little girl. I am terrible at guessing ages, but I'd say like maybe 5, 6 years old, like little, down at like my knee. I have giant knees though, so that doesn't mean anything. She came up to me while I was reading it and she was like, I'm sorry, I'm real sorry to interrupt you. That's Thor, right? And I went, yeah, it is. And then she goes, is it the female Thor? I was reading that there's a female Thor out there now. And like, she was like genuinely like intrigued about this. Not like, oh, I heard about this in passing. She was actually like, yeah, I heard there's like a female Thor now. Is that true? Is that what this book is? I went, yeah, it is. That's what this is. And I like showed her a couple pages of it and she's like, oh wow, yeah, look at that. And this was 3 years after Jane Foster Thor had been introduced. I love that that many years after she had been introduced, people were still coming in and going, yeah, Jane Foster, yeah, this is a thing. I'm still hearing about this. The buzz on this never died down. And again, this wasn't even in my store. This was someone in public. This wasn't someone who went out there in search of comics. That's the impact that this made, is that even just in my general life, just out there in public, in my civvies, I was out there and people were like, yeah, Jane Foster Thor, I've heard about this. There's a new female Thor, right? And again, this grown woman just seeing the excitement on her face of, oh wow, I see it now. Man, it's one of the best experiences I've had with comics. But as I said, she had this little girl there. I was showing this to her, but I would also show it to the little girl, and the little girl just had this look of, wow. Man, I don't get that often in comics. And a lot of times you get jaded in comics. A lot of times you think, what's the point of even reading these things anymore? But when you see stuff like that, it still makes that impact. It still makes you go, this is why comics are important. I love experiences like that. Now, let's go ahead and talk about what the future might hold for Jane Foster, because she is still around, and while the issue that came out today, it wasn't really a celebration of her like they were trying to advertise it, it did hint at some things for the future, which that's been one of the things that Jason Aaron has done better than anybody I've ever read in any comic ever. The way in which he is able to hint at things to come in future books, where he will just stop and go, hey, brief line about something here, that might mean something later. That's amazing how he can always pull it off. And there's a moment in here in which the future granddaughters of Thor make a brief mention about, oh yeah, you did this, you fought the Mangog, and that thing that you did to Laufey, Loki's father, and then one of the other sisters goes, that hasn't happened yet, yeah, don't mention that thing yet. I was like, oh, Jane's storyline isn't over with yet. I don't know if she's going to get like her own hammer, if she's going to get like a Beta Ray Bill Stormbreaker version of Thor. I don't know if they have any plans for that. Maybe they'll turn her into a new Valkyrie. That's actually a thought that I had when I saw her going into Valhalla, but if she's not going to Valhalla anymore, they probably won't do that. But it's definitely a safe bet to say she is going to stick around. She is definitely going to play a role in the War for the Ten Realms. She is definitely going to have something major that she does in there that's very important. But I don't know if it's going to be a superpower related thing or if it's going to be a human thing, because as I said, the defining thing about the Jane Foster run on Thor and Jason Aaron's entire run on Thor to begin with is humanity. So if she's able to like fight off Loki's father, this 50-foot tall ice giant, if she's able to fight him off with the power of humanity, with maybe just something that she and a bunch of other humans do, that could be pretty darn cool. But I don't know, those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you thought about the Jane Foster run on Thor down in the comments down below. Let me know some of your favorite moments from her series. I didn't even mention when she fought the Phoenix and she brought out the God Tempest. Oh my god. Like I said, there were a lot of cool-ass moments in this storyline. So let me know your favorite in the comment down below, or you can always reach me on Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr at Professor Thorgy. And if you have not checked out any of the Jane Foster Thor books, I'm going to put a link in the description down below to where you can find her very first trade on Amazon. And if you go through that link and buy that book, or if you don't buy that book and just buy anything else on Amazon, as long as you start by going through that link, we get a small cut of the profits. So thank you guys for tuning in, and as always, if you spread these videos around the web, it's one of the best ways to help this channel grow, and I really do appreciate anyone who does it. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come back next time. Bye.